All right, how are everybody doing? My name's Todd, and I'm with Tick. And on this channel, we try to figure out what makes people tick or why they chose to do what they do, either it be a hobby or their job. So today we're with Jackie Nairne, and as you can see back there on um, her bookshelf, CBD. So this is probably going to be a lot about some CBD stuff. So with that, so we'll just say, go ahead and tell us about yourself, Jackie, what you do,
Okay.
and then we'll just kind of go from there.
All right. I'd love to. Hi, I am excited to be here to chat with you and talk about something that is just my ultimate passion, which is hemp wellness, CBD slash hemp wellness. And I got into this about 4 years ago when the federal farm bill legalized farmers to farm industrial hemp for the first time in decades. And industrial hemp is defined as having 0.3% or less dry weight THC content. And that is what you're seeing out there in the marketplace. And it's legal across all 50 states. So when that farm bill passed, a lot of things were kind of aligning in my universe. I had a good friend of mine who was staying with me, and she had a boxer, Rocky. Rocky was about 14 years old and like the sweetest dog you could ever find. I have a friend who hates dogs. She just like despises them, never wants them around. I used to have to put my corgi in a crate if she came over. And she fell madly in love with Rocky. Rocky was just a dream. And Rocky was getting really sick. And my friend didn't have a lot of money and she was really worried about what to do because it's that whole thing where when you have an older animal, it's like, okay, not only can't afford to take it to the vet, but also what if they don't let me bring him home? If he's 14. So she was just paralyzed. I didn't know what to do. And I called my vet and I said, Monique, my friend's got this 14-year-old boxer and he's just barely able to move. And I'm sure something's going on. And I know he's old, but I think there's more going on. And and told her the whole story. She doesn't have any money. She can't really bring him in. Just what would you recommend for me? And she's been my vet forever. And she goes, okay, Jackie, she said, off the record, get him some CBD. And I was like, I'd never heard of it. I was like, I'm in Colorado, right? So, but I've never set foot in a dispensary because I'm not a pot smoker. And I was like, why is this off the record? Like, first of all, that was a really odd thing she said, off the record. This is 4 years ago, get him some CBD. And I was like, why is that off the record? And I said, what is that? She goes, well, you have to get it at you probably have to get it at a dispensary. And I said, you mean like a pot dispensary? And she goes, yeah. And I go, we're giving Rocky pot. Like that's all I
Oh yeah.
thought of, right? And my friend who owned the dog she uses like she smokes pot for her to calm her down because she has a lot of anxiousness. I can't use the term anxiety, but anxiousness and to help her sleep and all these other things. So she's like, oh yeah, I know what that is. I'll go pick it up at the dispensary. So I was like, okay, so I guess we're getting Rocky high, but he's 14. So
Yeah.
if that's going to mask his pain, I'm all for it. I don't care, right? She brings this stuff home, and the product that she brought it had some THC in it, which now that I've learned what I've learned, it's better not to give a dog that. But it just had, that tiny bit because it wasn't something, in order for it to have any more than that, it would have to come from a medical marijuana dispensary, right? So you would have to have a card and all that stuff. So we give Rocky this CBD, and within a couple of days, he was walking around the house.
Hmm.
I was in the kitchen fixing a sandwich, and he was like right there, like, "Where's mine?" And I couldn't even believe it. I was like, "Oh my god!" And at the time, I thought, "Wow, this is doing a really good job of masking his pain." That's what I thought it was doing. So I was like, "Okay, great." And then sort of, how things align in your universe, out of the blue, a really good friend of mine who I've known for many years was announcing that she was joining a new startup company. And she said, I can't tell you anything yet, but I'll be announcing it soon. And when she announced it on social media. And I was like, okay, I want to know what she's doing because she's like super successful no matter what she does. And I was like, okay, Sarah, what are you doing? And she goes, well, Jackie, what do you know about CBD? And I'm like, wait, what? And so it was just kind of like, well, actually, I do know something about CBD. And she said, and that's when she was talking about, you need to get on board with this company. They own the farm, they own the lab, they do the distribution. These guys are going to lead this industry. They're a total startup. And I was like, oh, okay. And then, so then I started researching and looking into the industry as a whole. And I'm a business person. I come from corporate business world. I've had my own executive search business now though for like 22 years. So I left that rat race and became an entrepreneur. But I started digging into the numbers and looking at the projections for the hemp industry, for the CBD industry. And I was like, okay, well, those kinds of projections would only be viable if this is viable, if this isn't snake oil, if this stuff like actually does anything, right? So then I started going into my research of cannabis and my research of, and I got out of my own way and my own biases about pot and thinking, it was until I really understood how this works in your body, which I'll talk about because I find it so fascinating. Before I understood that, I thought that people, because I tried smoking pot a few times in college, and I was like, yeah, it's not for me. And then but I had a lot of friends that were really into that, right? And then a lot of them just kept doing that after college. I mean, in college, you're keggers and you're smoking pot, and then you go, oh, I have to grow up now. But then there's these people that are still doing this stuff, and my little judgy Judy biases were just flaring out, like, oh my God, these lethargic, lazy, not motivated, whatever pot smokers, just like some of those movies, that
Oh
you
yeah.
see. They're all like what's that one with Keanu Reeves or whatever. And so I was like, never, really understanding all of the self-medicating that a lot of those people were probably doing, right? Like I thought they were smoking pot to get high. And in fact, so many people, since I've been involved in this industry, I have customers who are like, you know what? I thought I was smoking pot for the high, but now I can take in the CBD and I don't have the anxiousness and I'm sleeping better and I don't have the pain and I don't have to worry about driving my car or going to work or any of these things. And there were all these other things that it was doing for me that I wasn't even understanding yet, right? And so when I started going down the rabbit hole of that and trying to understand, okay, the first thing that I heard, and I was just eye rolling all over the map because people were like, "Oh yeah, it helps you sleep better, but it gives you more energy, and it helps you focus, and it reduces pain, and it reduces anxiety and anxiousness, and yada yada yada." And I'm like, "Yeah, right." I'm like all those things. First of all, they're contradictory, right? Like you're more focused and have more energy, but you sleep better. And I'm just like, I don't get it. And so I then started looking into I watched all these videos and these doctors and people all over the world talking about it because for the longest time in this country, we locked this stuff, we threw it into a Schedule 1 drug category, nestled next to, heroin, or I think cocaine isn't even a Schedule 1. I mean, like we had marijuana slash cannabis, hemp, all of that was synonymous with one term, and it was all locked under Schedule 1 drug category. Like, the stuff, which to be there requires that it is in no way medicinal, in no way therapeutic, and highly addictive. Like, those are the two things that put it in that category. So we, with our war on drugs way back when, and all of the fear mongering and I'm sure greed and politics and everything else that went on, this stuff has been locked away for decades, right? Until that farm bill passed. Well, other parts of the world were smarter about it. They were like, we're going to research this stuff. We're going to look at, oh, do
You're
you
fine.
see
Just
I
keep
froze?
going.
Okay, sorry. I don't know what happened.
Yeah,
Um,
that as
and
long as your
so,
voice is going, we can keep going. So it's all
okay, as
good.
long as you can hear me.
Yep.
And so it was like, um, I started watching a lot of the interviews, YouTube interviews and stuff with doctors that were in other parts of the world, because they were talking about it because they've been involved in it for a much longer period of time. That, when people say things like, well, there's not enough clinical studies and research, there's a whole school of people that are going, you know what, I don't care how many rats were tested, if I can feel better and have no side effects and it's not synthetic. Like, I am done with all of this stuff that creates more problems in my body that I then need to get more stuff to address. So there's just been a shift in how people are looking at holistic alternatives. But when I started really listening to, there was the best video, and if anybody that's watching this wants to watch this video, I highly recommend it. The guy who is doing it, he's talking about the endocannabinoid system, and I'll talk about that a little in more depth. But he's like super monotone, like you just have to practically do the Clockwork Orange on your, because he just is not that entertaining. But he uses an analogy of a mobile that you hang over a crib. And he was showing it like in your body, and he was talking about this endocannabinoid system. And basically, what is going on with all of us is that, and who knew? Like, this got discovered in the 90s, and it was a little Israeli research scientist that they were looking at medical marijuana and the THC cannabinoid, and they were trying to understand, why is this so therapeutically beneficial? Like, what is it about THC? What is it about this plant? And then they like stumbled on, it's kind of like Viagra, like, wasn't originally supposed to be for what it's used for. They stumbled on this non-psychotropic cannabinoid, non-intoxicating cannabinoid, which is CBD. And so they were like, wait a minute, there's this other molecule in here. It doesn't have this toxicating effect, but we see this, this, and this, and this going on with this, right? So that is how, so then they discovered that all mammals with a spine, so dog, cat, elephant, well, I'll tell you a fun elephant story, humans, any mammal with a spine has what's called an endocannabinoid system. And endocannabinoid is named after cannabis because they discovered it when they were looking at cannabis, right? So, but we've had it forever. So this endocannabinoid system in our body, it is like we have more receptors in our body to receive these phytocannabinoids, these plant-based cannabinoids, than anything else, right? So the endocannabinoids portion of that is because we create endocannabinoids. Our body creates the two they know the most about are 2-AG and anandamide. And there's like, they call, like one is like in breast milk for babies, that they call it the bliss molecule. And so and the runner's high, they're now starting to associate the runner's high with cannabinoids. They're looking at this very differently now. And so we create these endocannabinoids, but if you Google clinical endocannabinoid deficiency, you'll read all about what's going on with us. You know how we create melatonin is another example, right? But then you get older and you're not developing, your body isn't producing enough of it. So people are then supplementing, which, by the way, melatonin, no. Like CBD, yes, melatonin, no. But people are supplementing things that their body just isn't producing enough of. And we might not be producing enough of it for so many different reasons, right? Just everything in our air, our ground, the food we eat, everything, whatever's happening with our bodies. And so these one hemp plant, and the hemp plant, when I talk about the hemp plant, I'm talking about the one that was legalized, right? But their cannabis is all and one the same. It's just that when you're cultivating marijuana, which is actually a nickname. It's not a name. They're both cannabis sativa. That's the name of the plant. One is cultivated and harvested and grown for a high THC content. The other is cultivated and harvested and grown for a low, which is the hemp. So when I used to synonymously throw all those terms together, but now when and they refer to it as industrial hemp, and I'm sure that term probably came up to help differentiate between, the pot that's got the high. You go into a recreational marijuana dispensary, you're going to see very high THC content, low CBD, if any. If you go into a medical marijuana dispensary, you're going to see a much higher ratio of CBD and THC because they work synergistically really well together. So if you look at one hemp plant, there's over 100 cannabinoids in that one hemp plant, which is just so fascinating. We know now about CBD, THC, CBN, CBG, CBDA. There's some other things. We just keep discovering more and more of these cannabinoids and what they're doing for our body. And there's also, though, in that plant over 200 terpenes. And terpenes are in all, I mean, we know about terpenes. That's what makes a flower smell the way it does, or plant smell the way it does. Terpenes are there to ward off predators. That's what they're using for essential oils. And terpenes in cannabis are like essential oils on steroids. You'll see a lot, if you go Google cannabis terpenes, you'll see a lot out there talking about that's the new frontier for cannabis, is
Hmm.
because therapeutically, you can, and the company that I'm partnered with, they have a whole product line that are what they call boosts, which is just targeted terpene profiles. So you would never just take terpenes though. And I'll talk a little bit more later about if you're going to integrate CBD and hemp wellness into your health and wellness regimen, there's some things you need to do to get the most benefit from it because it's an investment. Quality CBD is not cheap, right? So, so in that, it's like all of these different things are being discovered all the time now. When the Farm Bill passed, they separated hemp from cannabis, marijuana, whatever, and put that out there and legalized it. And when they did that, it finally like opened the floodgates for research. So the people who do want to see more research, that's going to be happening in our country. But you can find plenty of it. I mean, anybody can reach out to me and I can find you information about what CBD is being used for. The thing I found super fascinating was that, and I was like, how did I not know this? But you know how you hear about things and you go, where was I? Like, where was I when this was happening? So it turns out that our own country, the U.S. government, had a patent, and I'll put it in the comments so people, if they want to look at it, it's so fascinating. For 20 years, our U.S. government had a patent on the non-intoxicating cannabinoids in cannabis, which is CBD, which is, anything that's not psychotropic, right? And if you look, I went and read, so I was like, wait, what? Like I totally wanted to understand what that was all about. And I went and read that entire patent. It actually just expired, like I think in 2020, either 2019. So the Farm Bill passed in late December of 2018.
Mhm.
And then this industry just started, blowing up, right? Because everybody and their brother wants in this industry because there's a lot of opportunity. Um, but it's unregulated, so that's the scary part, right? That's you have to be super careful about that. But I think it was probably either late 2019 or 2020 that patent expired. It was a 20-year gig. But when I went in there and read it, I was like, okay, this is just so fascinating because it was like paragraph after paragraph about how, like, pick any kind of illness or any kind of disease, and it would be like, we think this could address this, this, and this. And then the next thing would say, of course, we need to do research, we need clinical trials, we need it. But it was like paragraph after paragraph. There wasn't like A to Z, everything that we put prescriptions out for practically were things that they were saying these things could benefit. And the reason for it is so simplistic because the endocannabinoid system in our body that when these phytocannabinoids come in, they know exactly what to do. Our body knows exactly what to do with them because we create them in our body, right? So if we have all these receptors throughout every internal system, your endocrine system, your everything neurologically, everything physiologically, every single system in your body, we have these receptors for these cannabinoids. And so it's like when going back to what I was saying about how does it do all this stuff all at the same time? It's because it's the great balancer. And 80% of what goes south with people with their health is due to this imbalance in these systems. And 80% of the imbalance is often created by inflammation. CBD is a major anti-inflammatory. So right there, and it's holistic, and it's not synthetic. And so when it's almost like if you imagine, like if you have like a Christmas tree was always an analogy I would hear a lot, where, how you have a Christmas tree and have all these lights on and all of a sudden the few lights are going off, aren't on your tree, which is so annoying. I hate that. Last Christmas, the whole middle of my tree wouldn't light up. I was beside myself because it was the kind that you just drop in. And I'm like,
Oh yeah.
excuse my French. But anyway, so um, if you imagine that these lights are like flickering and going out on your tree, right? CBD is going in there and it's turning the lights back on. It's going where your body needs it. So where you're off balance, it's going to get you in balance. The whole thing about this endocannabinoid system is that it's putting your body in homeostasis. So in total balance. So if you imagine that all of the scary stuff is happening, outside of that balance, imagine if what you were doing for your body was feeding your body what it needs to keep you balanced. When people say, well, how does CBD do all that, Jackie? And I always say, it isn't the CBD that's doing it. It's the CBD. Well, I mean, it is, I guess, but it's the CBD is allowing your body to do what it needs to do, right? It just didn't have everything, didn't have all the tools, didn't have everything it needed to do that on its own. So those endocannabinoids. Now, the thing that's sort of that I've been reading about lately that I find really interesting is sort of going to shift things a little bit in terms of dosing for CBD is that they're now thinking that when you start taking a daily dose of CBD, and I'll talk a little bit about that and why that is how you do it. Like this is something that you don't periodically take CBD. This is like, people that take vitamins. I was never a vitamin taker, but people that take vitamins all the time, right? This is something that you would do on a daily basis because you need to keep feeding your body that, right? It needs to stay built up within your body. And so if if you are continuing to feed everything that is needed for your body to operate at this maximum capacity, that's where you get the best benefit. And if you're going to just like, here and there try to take it, it's gonna work for a while, not work, but when people are looking at it and they're saying, well, I tried CBD and it didn't work for me. I always know that quality is a huge thing, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Consistency, huge. I always tell people if you're not going to consistently take it, don't take it. Don't waste your money. Like if you're not going to take it, and you don't need a high dose. So if you're not going to just keep feeding that into your body, don't waste your money on a tincture or one that's going to go, that's the delivery. Topical CBD is very different. So when you look at kind of what is happening within that endocannabinoid system, then it makes sense to say, okay, like one person is taking CBD and they're like, yeah, my appetite isn't as strong, or and then someone else is taking it and they're like, and they're underweight and they're like, I'm eating better. Like, so it's so individualized in how it's received by every single person's body. And it's also your endocannabinoid system is so individual in how long it might take for it to start taking effect. Another big thing with CBD that I always tell people is that we have a tendency to associate the world of cannabis with THC. And if you put THC into your body, like if you smoke a joint or something like that, it hits you and you're high, right? CBD is not that at all. It is a very subtle. There are people that start taking CBD and then they're like, I don't feel like this is really doing that much. And then they stop taking it and they're like, oh my God, I had no idea how much that was helping me. So it's a much more subtle kind of a way that it's working within your body and way that it's getting your body to work. So I read a really interesting article the other day, and it was when I talk about the clinical endocannabinoid deficiency piece, they're starting to, well, going way back. okay, so when the settlers came to our country, everyone was required to grow an acre of hemp. It was legally required. George Washington had a hemp farm. Like hemp was everywhere. So the cattle were eating hemp. The hemp was getting into the water. All of this stuff was sort of, like when I was talking earlier about how the way we eat, the way we live, we're not getting this stuff into our body. That deficiency has a lot to do with the fact that hemp just got like basically, what do you call it? Like with prohibition, it was
Oh
the
yeah.
same concept. Like all of a sudden, boom, it's gone. Well, I was reading just yesterday about I think either Nebraska, I think it was in Nebraska, about these bison that they're now feeding hemp to, and I was like, oh wow. I mean, think about that. Like getting into our food supply is going to be so beneficial to be feeding that stuff back into our body. Um, there's a lot of things happening relative to hemp and cannabis federally right now. And for people that are either hearing about that and saying, well, the FDA, yada, yada, all this stuff that's happening. And the reason for all of that is that when we locked up everything under lock and key for decades, there were a couple of little nerdy scientists out of the UK that the government over there said, we're going to fund you guys to just start researching cannabis, right? So these guys, like little small startup, lab, start researching cannabis. Well, fast forward, this is back in the, I don't know, 70s, 80s. Fast forward, the company is called GW Pharmaceuticals. So GW Pharmaceuticals was working on all of this cannabis research, and they actually got the first FDA approved. It's pure CBD. It's not synthetic. This isn't a synthetic manufactured thing. This is like holistic, pure CBD. They got it FDA approved for two rare forms of epilepsy. How long have you been in Colorado?
I was born here and then I went on a 21-year stint in the military. So
Okay.
I was here till I was 15, and now I've been back here for 15 years. So I've been here 30 years.
Okay. So if I don't know if you remember this, but there's a company called Charlotte's Web. Charlotte's Web is a big brand CBD hemp company, right? Charlotte's Web was started by the Stanley brothers. There's six or seven brothers, and they started growing cannabis because they had an uncle that was suffering from some sort of cancer. So they started growing it for research purposes, for medical marijuana. I don't even think we had medical marijuana legalized yet, even in Colorado at the time. So then there is this woman who has this daughter. Her name is Charlotte Fiji. She has this baby that has this rare form of epilepsy called Dravet syndrome. And she's having like 300 seizures a day or some
Wow.
horrific number. Like she's having these seizures from the time she's born. So the mom starts giving Charlotte CBD, starts giving her cannabis that is low THC, high CBD content. And Charlotte Fiji went from like 300 seizures to three a month or so, just crazy. So what
Wow.
ended up happening is that it was all over the news. It was on 60 Minutes. Everybody was talking about this. People were actually moving to Colorado so their children could have access to this. It was like a huge deal. The Stanley brothers were so cool. They started so anyway, the Stanley brothers connected with her, and because she was not able to produce enough of it, and they said, we'll create a strain for you for Charlotte.
Hmm.
So Charlotte's Web is not only the name of their company, that's the name of the strain that they created that was high CBD, low THC. And when the federal farm bill passed in December 2018, they
Hmm.
reclassified Charlotte's Web as hemp because it's so low in the THC element. But the Stanley brothers were very cool because they also started a nonprofit so that people, if they couldn't afford it, could still come and give this stuff to their children. So now you look at this whole thing going on. This is back in 2019, and I'm like, okay, wait a minute. So GW Pharmaceuticals get, it's called Epidiolex. They get Epidiolex FDA approved as the very first and only cannabinoid, cannabis-based product, right? And it's the same thing that the Stanley brothers created for Charlotte, Fiji, right? It's the same stuff. And it's like, okay, well, we already knew that this was really beneficial because this is what was happening a long time ago. So so they get this FDA approval, right? And I went on their website, and it's gone now, but I went on their website back when all this happened. It was, and Epidiolex was FDA approved like in, like, let's say June or July of 2018. So just before that farm bill was passed. And so at that point in time, everything was still, illegal. GW Pharmaceuticals was, rumor has it that they were paying lobbyists in states where they didn't have legal cannabis to lobby
Mm.
against it, all this kind of stuff, right? A whole just big pharma play, probably, right? And so they end up like getting this FDA approved. And when I went on their website, they had about 17 pending patents for Epidiolex that was FDA approved for one thing, for the epilepsy in children. And the 17 pending patents were the exact same product, which is the pure CBD, non-synthetic CBD, but it was to address every other, illness, disease, and their brother, very much like the patent that the government had. So it was just like, whoa. I mean, and it was gone pretty quickly too. GW Pharmaceuticals was just acquired by Jazz Pharmaceuticals out of Ireland for over $7 billion. They are the
Wow.
largest worldwide cannabis research company in the world. Like, they're huge. But so meanwhile, it's like, I don't think that they necessarily ever in a million years thought that that separation was going to happen and that farm bill was going to get passed, right? And when that happened, it's coming back. It's a long story I'm giving you, but it's coming back to what I was saying about the quagmire we're in right now with all this federal stuff. Is that when something is FDA approved, it can't be a dietary supplement and it can't be in food. If it is FDA approved as a drug, it cannot just be. And I get it, because I mean, like, you don't want, like, some of these drugs, God forbid, they were in our food, right? It shouldn't even be in anyone's body. But so it was really like, I really thought, that's just my own little opinion, which, who cares? But I was like, you know what? I think they were just trying to get this under lock and key with Big Pharma. Like, this was not, but what had happened was that it was almost like, I really attribute social media, word of mouth, testimonials, and referrals as to how this got out into the general public. And I think it was too hard to put a lid on it. I think it was too hard to say, nope, 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 we're going to reel all this back in. Nobody can have this CBD. It has to run through Big Pharma. That whole deal. Epidiolex sells an annual prescription for Epidiolex. It's $35,000.
Jeez.
It is the same stuff that I sell to my customers, right, for 100. It's ridiculous. It's unbelievable. But when you look at the whole thing right now that's happening, and there was a lot of push for quite a while, like ever since the Farm Bill passed, there was a lot of pressure on the FDA. Come on, you guys, let's regulate this stuff, because we're in an unregulated industry. You and I could go grab some olive oil and God knows whatever, some E. coli. I mean, whatever we want into one of these bottles, and our wonderful CBD, call it, and sell it. And there's no regulation. There's no policing it. There's no, and so that's where people are so, like, kind of lost, is that they're starting to hear about this stuff and they're like, well, it's unregulated. Like, how do you know what you're getting? And you need to be careful. And I'll talk about that too a little bit later. But and so it's kind of like all of this stuff that's gone down just this week. They have now decided, or maybe last week, they decided that the FDA they can't figure it out. They can't figure out I mean, in a way, all they would really have to do is to say, okay, fine, that's our rule, but we're making an exception with cannabis. But no, they're not doing that. So they're like, we can't, we can't make this a dietary supplement. We can't make it a food supplement because it's an approved drug, blah, blah. So they're like, their hands are up in the air. So they kicked the can over to Congress. So that just
Hmm.
happened. So now they're saying, and there was a lot of push that we thought was going to happen right before the pandemic hit. And then, of course, everything got tabled. So, all of these things were going to get voted on. Nothing happened. And so it's still kind of up in the air. And yet you're seeing it everywhere. You're seeing CBD in coffee and you're seeing CBD here, here, and here. They're not really the things that the FDA is really coming down on people about. And because I am attached to a CBD brand, then I can't make medical claims, right? Even in
Hmm.
our conversation, which I think is good. I don't think, I think that when you have a business and you're trying to protect yourself, then there's a lot of compliance issues with the company I'm partnered with. But it's because the FDA is saying can't make medical claims on this stuff. No, 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 can't do that. And so they're kind of coming at these CBD brands for things like that, right? But you've got to have, if you're looking at implementing and integrating CBD into your life, first of all, you need to make sure it's quality. That is the number one thing. The thing that I was so shocked to hear is that hemp is like a major scavenger plant. So it sucks up everything in the ground around it. And they actually discovered this after, like, I think in the early 90s, after Chernobyl. And after
Hmm.
that nuclear disaster, this company decided to do like a scientific research company, and they decided to test it out, and they planted hemp all around other things to other crops too. But that's where they discovered what a bioaccumulator it is and how it is like, it's great. It's great for an anti-pollutant. Like I think it like clean the air and ground for 40 miles or something, some
Hmm.
ridiculous thing. So if you think about that though, and you think about the fact that prior to December of 2018, we couldn't grow hemp in this country, but you saw CBD products, right? So the
Oh yeah, it's
CBD,
everywhere here.
so the CBD products that you saw, that hemp was not US grown hemp. It was coming, 80% of it was coming from China. China uses hemp like they used it at Chernobyl. China uses hemp to clean as an anti-pollutant, to clean the ground, to clean the air. They were chopping that stuff down. And then we were like, oh yeah, send it to us. And then we were over here manufacturing. There were probably only about 3 manufacturing plants manufacturing CBD from this dirty, gross, nasty hemp. And the thing that, you always hear is the quality of your oil starts in the soil, right? So you have to have the highest quality soil that you're growing that hemp on. So if you're looking at, and the company that I'm partnered with, they've been growing hemp on a USDA organic certified farm that is a 6th generation farm that's been organic certified for other crops for a quarter of a century. So super, super clean, right? But you've got to ask for, if you're looking at any other brands, you've got to make sure that you see what's called a COA, which is a certificate of analysis.
Yep, your mic's
Like,
gone.
yeah, like a detailed lab report.
Your microphone's gone.
Oh, sorry, can you hear me?
Oh, there you go.
That's weird. Oh, it does
Yeah.
that. It's the certificate of analysis is a detailed lab report that is prepared by a third party lab, and it is telling you everything that isn't in your extract. So that specific extract. A lot of companies have a COA, but it's not the specific extract. So there's even a lot of that weird stuff going on. Because again, nothing's policed, nothing. So you want to make sure when you're looking at a product, you want to make sure that you can see the COA, that you can see exactly what is in that lab report, and you don't want it to be their lab report. You want it to be third party,
Hmm.
unbiased kind of a thing. You want to know exactly where that hemp is grown. You want it to be USDA organic certified. There are not a lot of USDA organic certified CBD brands out there yet. So in order to become USDA organic certified, you've got to turn a crop over 3 times. The company that I'm partnered with, they started growing hemp in back when the first Farm Bill passed, and they were allowed to do it licensed with the state of North Carolina. So we were one of the first USDA organic certified hemp farms in the entire industry because they'd already been growing it. So you've got to turn a crop over for three times before you can even apply. So in the first, after that Farm Bill passed and when the first harvest was happening for these companies, they were, they still needed a few years before they would even be able to try to get that certification. And when they first were certifying hemp as a crop, they were not yet certifying a final product. So they didn't start certifying a final product as USDA organic until another almost like 2/4 of the year. So I think it was like um, in maybe the second half of 2020 that we had our first USDA organic certified product. And then they only let it be for a full extract, which I'll tell you about in a second. But if you did anything to separate anything out, that couldn't get certified yet. So they've been very, very strict about what they're going to certify, which is good, which is smart. But if you look now, there's less than a handful of CBD brands out there that are vertically integrated where they own everything and do it all in-house that are USDA organic certified. It's just, it's still a young industry, and the industry is just, on fire. I mean, it's just blowing up. But the other thing that I wanted, well, let me ask you any questions, and I'm just blah blah.
No, it's interesting because there's little CBD places everywhere here. They're all over the place, and you can just, it's literally everywhere. You drive down the road and there's the
Right.
CBD flag flying in front of some.
Yeah, the
And
gas
some,
station.
yeah,
Yeah.
you can go get it, and then there's just it's not even a dispensary. It's just a CBD oil place where you just go buy CBD oils, and
Yeah.
it probably has gummies in there or some food products or something like that. And they're in every little town. They're everywhere, and
Yeah.
it makes you wonder. Now that I know that, it makes me wonder: how much of this is real
Yeah.
stuff, or is it just
Right.
somebody
I mean, like if
snake
you look
oil
at
kind
it,
of stuff?
if you find really cheap CBD, there's a reason, right? It's kind of
Yeah.
like you get what you pay for in the world
Yep.
of CBD to a certain extent. Um, and because anybody and their brother can throw anything together and sell it, right? Like you could be, I know the Consumer Reports, when I first got involved in this industry, I was reading that Consumer Reports thing, and they were talking about how they went and they grabbed all this CBD off, they bought it online, they got it off retail shelves, they got it in all these different avenues, and they tested it out. And when I was saying earlier about E. coli, they found E. coli. They found like heavy metals and toxins and all this stuff. And they were like, oh my God, it's, I don't, and then it was like big flag, like, oh God, don't buy, just wait till it gets FDA approved, because then we
Right.
start trying
Right.
to plant that idea in people's heads. And it's like, I always tell people, yes, you have to be buyer beware. Like for the longest time, I had people that were like, oh yeah, I bought some CBD on Amazon. I'm like, no, Amazon, they don't sell CBD. So whatever you're buying on Amazon, there's no CBD in that. Like it's
Yeah.
not even, they don't even sell it. And so a lot of people now are kind of getting to this point where when I first got involved, people didn't know hardly anything. The Farm Bill had just passed, right? Now you're right. You drive down the street, it's gas stations here, it's there,
Oh yeah.
and
Everywhere.
it's like, oh my God, it's everywhere, and different big box stores are going to be bringing it in. A lot of the big box stores are waiting for the FDA to get off their butt with the whole food supplement, whatever. Like everybody's kind of waiting around, but it's like it's this whole thing about people now are sort of like they're like, yeah, I want to try. I'm reading about it, I'm hearing about it, or I know somebody who's using it and I want to try it, but I don't know where to go. And that's why that's why I'm so passionate about what I do, is because as an advocate, partnered with like the highest quality company, I know that I can help them with the best stuff they're going to get their hands on. But I'm like a consultant with them, right? So I help them because another big part of this is you need to figure out your sweet spot dose. So nothing drives me more nuts than when somebody is saying, yeah, I'm like companies, for example, that are like advertising CBD, and someone's saying, well, I'm taking this and it's not helping. They're like, well, you probably need a stronger dose. It's like, no, that's so wrong. I mean, sometimes that might be true, but the thing about CBD is that when you put this stuff, when you're feeding your body these phytocannabinoids, your body only needs what it needs. If you're giving it, you can't overdose on it. It really can't hurt you to take more than you need, but you're wasting your money. Like your body is just going to eliminate it. And I've even had people where they've been taking CBD, it was working for them for a while, then it quit working. And I'm like, okay, well, we're going to do a reset. You need to stop taking it for a week, and then we're going to micro dose you back to a sweet spot dose. And what the reason why, kind of going back to what I was saying earlier about how we're kind of conditioned to feel like, oh, I took that CBD and it really didn't do anything. I must need more, right? Like I didn't feel anything, that maybe I didn't take enough. And it's like, no, I had a woman who she was, I love the challenge of somebody telling me, I tried CBD, and this woman had like, she was in some bad car accidents in her 20s. She'd had both her knees replaced. She'd had everything and anything done. She was in all this pain, and she'd been in all this pain for like a few decades, right? And she was like, I was just really hoping that CBD would work for me. And I'm like, you're my challenge. Like, we're going to get it working for you. So it was kind of like, we started off, and the first 30 days, like with my company, with a 30-day money back guarantee, but that isn't always necessarily going to give you enough time, because like for her, she started taking it. I was helping her because you start low and you go slow. So when you start taking it daily like that, you just take a little bit for, let's say, a week, and just kind of pay attention to your body and what you're noticing. I always have my customers, I'm always like, make a list of every issue you have: sleep, pain, mood, anxiousness, focus, energy, whatever are your things. Make a list, and then I want you to rate those things on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the most severe. Like, this is the most severe pain I'm having, or whatever. And then we're going to keep revisit. I want you to revisit that over the next, month. Like, we're going to get you going on this dose, and you're going to stay on this dose for a week. And then we're going to go back and visit those numbers and see where you are. Because again, when I was saying how it's more subtle, sometimes that helps people go, oh yeah, I was a 9 and now I'm kind of a 7, as opposed to somebody going, because they didn't go from a 9 to a 2, they're like, oh, it's not working,
Yeah.
kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And so with that woman, we were like 3 months in, and I was determined. I'm like, and she's like, it's just not working. And I was like, oh my God. It's like kind of like the Vietnam War, but that's not a good analogy. But I mean, it's sort of like we're out this deep in, right? I'm like, okay, we're not going to just stop now. Like we need to keep going. And I even told her, I said, look, I will fund your next month if I need to. You're not going to not continue to take it for another 4 weeks, because we're this far gone, going into this. And I'll be damned if I wasn't sitting around in my office and that one. Oh, sorry.
You, the
Am I back?
prox yeah, it's like you lean
Okay.
back and then it goes away.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah.
And so I was just in my office, and she texted me and she was like, oh my God, I was going up and getting my laundry upstairs and realized that I was in no pain. Like, and she was just like in tears. So I was in tears. I'm like, oh my God, But yeah, and it's just all pure. It's all pure and natural. And she's, of course, like my most devoted customer, because it's life changing for people to have that kind of experience. Going back to Rocky, the boxer. So Izzy, my corgi, when I started doing this business, Izzy was 11. I just lost her. She just passed in June. So she was 15. And I called Monique. Oh, I didn't finish telling the story about. So when I called my vet the first time, she said, off the record, go, get some
Yeah.
CBD. She's not your typical vet. She's like she's a jazz and blues singer. She's in a jazz and blues band. She's got piercings all over her body. She's got tattoos everywhere. So when she was saying give the dog this stuff. I was like, well, yeah, because she's probably, like again, because I didn't know it, what I didn't know. And I thought, well, probably your average vet would never say that, right? So I had Izzy in, and she's a corgi, and she's got those short, stubby corgi legs, and she was hobbling around. She was 11 years old, and I had taken her in to see Monique, and Monique said, I think you can't let her on your bed like she can't jump on and off the couch. You need to get her a ramp because, it's just she's getting heavier. Oops, my thing just fell out. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. And but she said, get her some CBD. She said there's nothing wrong with her that I can treat. Get her some CBD. And I'm like, well, it just so happens now. I know I have the best stuff ever. I started giving Izzy CBD, and I was going out to my mailbox, and you know how you can feel somebody behind you? And
Yep.
I looked behind me, and she's running behind me. My daughter came home to visit, and she's like, Mom, Izzy looks 5 years younger. I said, I know, because she lost weight, because now she's more mobile. And she goes, what's going on? I go, it's the CBD, because now she has more energy and she's moving around more. And so then it was all for that, for her pain, for her joints, for that stuff. But then it was about 3 months later, and I'm giving her a daily dose of the CBD, right? Because it does the same thing for her that it does for us. And I was sitting in my great room and realizing, oh my God, it's 4th of July. There are all these fireworks going off and stuff. And I was going to get up and go check on Izzy because whenever there's thunderstorms or fireworks, she has this little comfy canvas crate in my bedroom that she goes in and snuggles up in like it's a little sanctuary. So I was getting up to go check on her, and she was right at my feet. And I thought, oh, she's asleep. She must be asleep. And she's not, but she was wide awake, totally calm. And I was like, oh my
Hmm.
God. So then I was associating that back to the CBD. And then I was kind of like, she's not barking as much all the time. Like if there would be like she would start barking just like incessantly. And I'm like, what the hell are you barking about? And then a few minutes later, somebody comes around the corner by my house, right? It's so you know how they know.
Yep.
And so all of a sudden I'm realizing that she's not barking all the time, but she's just calmer. And it was again all because of the CBD. They gave an elephant in Warsaw, Poland, at the zoo in Warsaw, Poland. There was an elephant who they're very familial, they're very like they really love their little pack of elephants. And her mate died, and so this female elephant was just off the rails, and she was getting really aggressive and really angry, and all this stuff was happening with her. They gave this elephant CBD. Now, I, of course, was like, I'm reading this article and I'm like, what's the dose?
Yeah.
Like, how much would you give an elephant? I want to know. But yeah, and they were like, oh my God, this elephant like totally calmed down. Yeah, again, same thing.
Hmm. Yeah. And I know it from a lot of the veterans through the VA system. The VA just gives you a
Yeah,
lot of opioids and things like that. And
yes,
a lot of these guys are going, they're just in pain, and then you get all the side effects from that and stuff. And they're starting
yeah,
to learn about, and I see it in different chats and things like that. That somebody was taking a lot of opioids for pain, and they maybe lost a leg or had a lot of back problems, and then
hmm,
they decided they were going to try CBD, and they go off and do this, and now they're not taking any opioids at all, and their life is great,
right.
and now they're trying to, people are, starting to ask, why can't we go to the VA and get this stuff? And it's
Right. And
not
if
not going to happen.
there are industries like the police force. Like if you think about these high anxiousness types of jobs,
Oh yeah.
firefighters, police officers, military, professionals. It's like the people that could benefit from this even the most, right? They're still, again, just because of what's happening, like it's federally legal, but states can do what they want, yada yada. And the government is like still putting like a lid on it for a lot of these types of state employees, government employees. And because when they're testing for THC, when there's a lot of these tests are not designed yet to exclude the non-intoxicating cannabinoids. And so depending on, like when I have somebody who gets drug tested, it's always one of the first things I ask, when I'm talking to a new customer, I'm like, do you get drug tested? Because if they don't get drug tested, I will always tell them to take full spectrum, and I'll tell you kind of what that's about in a second. But if they do get drug tested, I don't want any to be the cause for anyone to lose their job, right? And so it's like, no, you cannot have even that little tiny, if it's 0.3% dry weight THC content, that's so minimal. But even that little tiny bit, because you're building it up in your system by taking it consistently every day, could come through on a drug test, right? So it's not going to do anything to make you high, but it could show up on a drug test. So
Right.
it's like, no, people that get drug tested cannot take full spectrum CBD products, right? There are, when they extract from the plant, there is full spectrum, which is basically, and the company that I'm partnered with, we only extract from the flower and the young leaves because that's where the richest CBD content is. A lot of companies, if you look at the bottle, it'll say hemp extract from aerial parts. And that would be everything above ground, which is stems and stalks, which is just filler. There's just not rich CBD content in that. And the high content cannabinoid wise in the hemp plant is the CBD. These other things are what they call minor cannabinoids, right? The ones that are in much less abundance. But in that, if let's say that you're looking at a full spectrum product, the thing that's so beautiful about that is that there's what they call an entourage effect. So all of these cannabinoids and terpenes and everything is you take the plant as it's intended, as it grows out of the ground, and you're extracting that and keeping it all intact. That entourage effect is super powerful because they all work so well synergistically together. And CBD does not attach directly to those receptors. THC does attach directly. And CBD diffuses the intoxicating aspects of the THC, and the THC enhances the CBD's ability to get where it needs to go faster and better. So that's why they work super well together. And that's why if you go in a medical marijuana dispensary, you'll see those ratios might be 1-to-1 or 3-to-1, or, like you're going to see them always being put together synergistically. Broad spectrum is when they go in and they do the extraction, but then as part of the process of creating that final product, they're taking that tiny, tiny trace amount of THC out. So they're making it what they call broad spectrum, in that it's all of those 100+ cannabinoids, of which many we don't even know anything about yet. All those terpenes, all the flavonoids, all the molecules from the plant, except for that little tiny lick of THC. And then there is what's called isolate. And isolate is where they do the extraction and then they isolate one cannabinoid. Like we have a CBN sleep jelly, and it's an isolate product. CBN is actually oxidated THC, so it's non-intoxicating, but it's the only other cannabinoid that's sedative. Like I always tell people, CBD and these doses that I'm talking about, when people are taking consistent CBD every day, they're not considered high doses. And CBD is biophasic. So like in high doses, CBD sedates, but in lower doses, it stimulates. So these are not high doses. So I always tell my customers, don't take this any later than 2 hours before you go to bed. Like, this is not, CBD does its magic by keeping you in deep REM sleep. Or if you wake up in the middle of the night, you can go right back to sleep. And that's why the very first thing you'll hear people say when they start taking CBD is they'll be like, oh my God, I'm sleeping so much better. I feel so much more rested. But it's not to put you to sleep. It's does its magic when you are asleep and keeps you there, right? So CBN, this CBN sleep jelly that we just released, is like CBN being oxidated THC. It has a sedative element to it, but a non-intoxicating thing. So that's something you would take right before you go to bed. Or there are targeted terpene profiles that are kind of sedative, not sedative like a drug, but that are like lavender. There's
Right.
a terpene in cannabis called linalool, which is very much like lavender, and it's very calming and soothing, and kind of helps lull you to sleep. The thing that CBD does in terms of helping you go to sleep is that it's such a calming, like how people that have just thoughts racing through their head and that's why they can't go to sleep. If you're taking CBD consistently every day, a lot of that anxiousness gets balanced back out. So you don't have that as much. So that's where people might say, well, yeah, it's helping me go to sleep. That's why.
Hmm.
Or somebody who has a lot of pain. So now they're taking the CBD and they're not experiencing all that pain so they can go to sleep.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And and I don't know if you've followed or heard or um, so the state of Colorado in the last election cycle has passed the use of psychedelics. So
Yeah.
it's an interesting another one of those things where it's coming out of the ground, it's
Yep.
natural, and why should we not be studying that and see what can come out of that also? And then
Yes.
you start to think, well, what else is out there that you know, we're not even looking at, and
Yep.
there could be just all kinds of crazy things that
And I think people are finally getting to the point where people are fed up. First of all, there's not a lot of trust in the FDA. I mean, after the whole opioid crisis, the faith and trust in the FDA is pretty much gone. And most people feel like they're just sitting in the back pocket of Big Pharma anyway, that there isn't a real drive in that world of those two entities to get us healthier. Like there's just not a lot of motivation to get us healthier and keep us healthy, right? So people are looking for holistic alternatives. People want holistic alternatives. And I think that the stigma attached to cannabis is finally going away to where it can be looked at it relative to its actual therapeutic benefit. I actually started watching, I don't even know why, I don't even know how this happened, but I started watching Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman. Like it was
oh
with
yeah,
James
yep,
Seymour and
yep,
that super hot Joe Lando, who was such a hunk back then. And I started watching that. I got like really into it because for the first time I ever, I don't know, like thought I was going to watch it, I was like, oh God, wasn't into it at all. The thing that's really interesting to me about it now is that she is back, this is back in the 1800s. She's like a female doctor, which is really pretty much unheard of, right?
yep,
But
yep,
she's partnered up with this medicine man, with this guy from this Indian tribe,
yep.
and he's teaching her all about plant-based holistic medicine. And it's like, oh my God. So I hear her, she'll talk about some of the things that are in some of our products that I never even knew were a thing, right? And she'll be like, and I'll be like, oh yeah, I know that does this and it's for that. I just had never paid attention to any of that stuff before.
Yeah, it's
There's so much out there.
yeah, and we hear, this state's going to pass. New Hampshire just was looking at passing their marijuana law so they can have recreational marijuana there, and
Yep.
and and I think that's where it's going to, some things will start to change. Um, they'll get that able to use the marijuana legally, and I know
Yeah.
here, they don't even drug test anybody anymore because everybody's using it. If you're not using it, you're probably sitting you've been near somebody in the last 24 hours that was smoking
Yeah.
it. And now you've got, it's a little bit into your system. So places aren't even drug testing anymore because they can't hire anybody because everybody fails their drug test. Because,
Well, and I think that, just like what I was saying earlier, I think that, I met this gal when I first got involved with my company, and we were doing this little booth together at some little vendor event or something. And she was a big time pot smoker. And she had been smoking it since she was young. And she was totally self-medicating, right? She was that story that I was saying about these people that are like, oh my God, now I can take the CBD and I can drive and go to work and not worry about getting in trouble or, all those
right.
kinds of
Oh, yeah.
things. And she was just like, if this would have been around and available to me, I would have done this the whole time and not smoked the pot. Like I would have. And so it's just like whenever I run across people who say, Oh yeah, I know all about cannabis because I smoke, I smoke pot, and I'm like, well, have you tried, when I say, well, have you ever tried just the CBD, taking CBD, not necessarily with all that THC. And a lot of them still think that the high is a part of what they like about it. And then they, like I said, they realize that I thought that's what it was I liked about it, but it's because the high that I thought was what was helping me feel calmer and helping me not be in pain or, doing all these things. I didn't realize it was a separation of that. I think it's back to the idea of, and the guy that I was talking about that's just so monotone that you have to pry your eyes open to watch
Right.
his video. When he's using that mobile, it's so fascinating because he's basically saying, okay, you've got like this mobile and you've got all of these pieces hanging down from this mobile and it's all kind of balanced out, right? But then all of a sudden something happens and the mobile gets, and then there's a problem with this one piece like down at the bottom. And his analogy was looking at that as prescription meds, right? And
Mm.
like pharmaceuticals. And he goes, so you have this problem now with your body, right? And so now you need this pharmaceutical, you need this medication to address this problem you're having with your body. And he was using like paper clips, and he would paper clip onto the bottom of the mobile, so now you get this. And okay, well, that set everything off balance because now you've got this area over here that's off balance. So now you need another paper clip over here. And it's back to when I was telling you about, when my dad died back in 99, and they handed me his wallet at the hospital, and all those, prescriptions were written out on a piece of paper. And I was like, I just didn't know he was that sick. Like I didn't even
Mm.
know he had anything wrong. And I'm looking at all these medications. And now when I reflect back on that, I'm like, he probably had one or two things wrong. And then he had to get medication. And then he had a bunch of side effects. And then he had to get medication. And then he had more side effects, right?
Right.
I
Oh
mean, the
yeah.
thing about these holistic alternatives is there's no side effects. There's no, you can't OD. There's no side effects. It's kind of a why not try it
Right.
and see. And I also kind of thought that I thought that because a lot of prescription medication isn't fixing anything, it's masking something,
Right.
right? So like an opioid, like that pain, if you didn't have that pain med, the pain isn't gone.
Yeah.
You just aren't feeling it. I mean, I
Right.
think that's how it works. Whereas, so the guy, when he was doing the mobile, he was like, CBD is at the very top of the mobile. Those are those beads at the top that when you're balanced out at the top, everything else is in line. And so he was just talking about how it's addressing everything at this systemic level. And that's why it's not masking it. It's actually addressing it and rebalancing and fixing stuff, which is then the aftermath of that is that you feel better or whatever.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Oh yeah. Yeah. It's amazing that the yeah, I think I read somewhere that hemp was put onto the schedule because of the paper industry, because you could make paper much faster with hemp because it grows faster
Yes.
than trees did, and
Yes.
you could make paper much faster and easier with hemp. And the paper
Oh,
industry didn't like that, so they wanted it to be illegal, and they somehow weaseled it on.
it was
Um,
it was a threat to the textile
oh
industry. It
yeah,
was a threat to the automotive industry. It was a threat to the oil and gas industry. It was, I mean, like, and hemp is there was a company when I first started with my company. There was a company that got like a $6 million grant from the government to create hempcrete. So instead of concrete,
oh
and
yeah,
there was another one
yep,
that was looking at hemp. So instead of hardwood floor, you'd have a
yep,
hemp wood floor. I mean, yeah, it crosses all industries. It threatens a ton of industries,
oh yeah,
and all the fear mongering and the stuff that was going on and the prohibition of cannabis of hemp was absolutely driven by that, by
oh yeah,
greed, politics, and all of those things. It's like I hear so many people always say to me, "Oh my God, I wish my grandmother would have been able to take this," or "I wish,
oh yeah,
I wish." And it's like shame, shame, shame that it's tragic that that stuff has been kept from us for so long.
Yeah, that's if you just start getting in just to the hemp construction stuff, it's like hemp
Yeah,
wood, hemp concrete,
yes,
just the stuff that because it's just so much stronger and it
yes,
grows faster like bamboo. It's
yes.
almost the same
Super
thing.
easy to grow.
Yeah, super
Yeah,
easy. Well, and when that farm bill went into effect, so that next summer, I don't forget we were driving around here in northern Colorado, and
right.
I'm driving by this field and I'm thinking, man, these are some ugly looking Christmas trees. And it's isn't it a little too early to be planting these trees, because
Yeah,
they're already pretty big. And I was like, man, these are ugly, ugly Christmas trees.
yeah.
And my
They're big. They're weeds. It's a,
Yeah,
you
they're
know,
great big
hemp is
weeds.
a weed,
Yeah.
right?
So yeah,
But you're right. I mean, like you don't kill as many trees. You know, our harvest season is like 3 months long.
oh
Like,
yeah.
they start planning that. I mean, like my company is so cool because when they started growing with the state of North Carolina, I grew up in Corvallis, Oregon, and went to Oregon State University. And who knew? But Oregon State University has the largest hemp innovation and research center in the country, which
Oh,
is super, super cool. But it's like, you know, hemp has been um, like out there and being looked at for so many different things. So when they legalized it, they refer to it as industrial hemp for that reason. Because there's a whole lot, even my company, that's creating all these incredible um, products with hemp extract. They are, looking into other things to do with the hemp that is outside of that, as they
yep,
should be. I
yep,
mean, there's the hemp industry. I mean, when you look across other parts of the world and the things that they're using hemp for, I mean, if you look at just the idea of what I was saying earlier about being such a bioaccumulator and being such an anti-pollutant, I mean, think about that, like that alone. So yeah, I mean, there's going to be a point in time when you and I will watch this little conversation and go, God, remember when we were like talking about this? Because it's going to be the reason why this industry is projected to be like over 20 billion within the next couple of years. When I started with my company, this industry was about 500 million. That was in the company launched so the Farm Bill passed in late December 2018.
right.
This company launched in February of 2019. They've been in development for 2 years, but they didn't want to launch till the Farm Bill passed. So they launched in February. I joined in March. So in March of 2019, it was a $500 million industry. It's at over 7 billion now,
Wow.
over 7 billion. And so if you look at that and you look at where it's projected to be at 20 billion, we're just talking about hemp being used for CBD. We're not talking about all the other uses
Oh
of
yeah, there's just
a
tons of
massive
uses.
industry.
Yeah. I was watching a guy on YouTube. He's building a boat and he was using hemp as the filler between all the boards, and then they would put the tar
Oh,
over
wow.
so they were using the hemp because
Yeah.
it doesn't rot. So and
Yeah.
it's
I mean,
just
it's
like,
like when I was reading about the hemp wood, they were saying that, how hardwood, like I have hardwood floors, they're just a pain in the ass.
oh
Like
yeah,
they're just, the upkeep on them is horrible. Mine look terrible because they need to be, whatever, sanded, stripped,
yep,
redone,
yep,
whatever,
all that, yep,
$800 to get that done. And this stuff is so durable. It's beautiful. It's like, yeah, if you can have, instead of having to wait for a million trees to die, to cut down a million trees, to have things that you can create, or the textile, that there's so many clothing lines now that are hemp, hemp
yep,
textile.
yep. Yeah, it's interesting because I don't see much hemp out here. Maybe I don't drive by it enough, or
Yeah,
don't drive out further into the sticks of the the eastern plains of Colorado. I don't see it out here, but every once in a
yeah,
while you run across a big hemp field, and you run across big marijuana fields too.
right.
And so you're like, well, okay, which one is this one?
Yeah,
And usually the marijuana fields has barbed wire around it, and then you know which one you're looking at. But
yeah, right. Yeah,
nobody wants to steal the hemp because what are they going to do with it?
yeah.
You'd have to have all that specialized equipment to do anything with it. And of course, they
And
figure
it's a
that
lot
they
of it is how it's cultivated because I was like, when I was reading about that hemp wood, I'm like, well, our plants don't look like that. Our plants look more like a marijuana, right? Like when I look
Yep.
at our fields and when they're cutting down our stuff for our products, because we have there's five founders, a husband, a wife, the brother, and then the two farming brothers that are sixth generation farmers. And our CEO and our president, the husband and wife, are from farming generations of farming in their family. They just
Hmm.
weren't farmers, and but now they are in a way because of this. But when I was trying to understand this stuff, I'm like, well, this doesn't look like wood. Like, how could this be used for? It's because like it's how you cultivate it and grow it.
Right.
So like you could have stems and stalks of hemp that are, 10 feet high.
Oh yeah.
Ours are look like they look more like they grow ours in the greenhouse and then they take it out, plant it in the fields, and then, and like I said, it's only like I think it's like a 3 month
Yep.
and then harvest it. Like
Yep.
it's super, super fast.
Yeah, there was I want to say someplace in West Africa that is growing hemp and it's like 30 feet tall. And
Yeah,
they're just
see, I think
harvesting this
like,
stuff and it's just huge. It's like gigantic. It looks like bamboo. It's really, really tall
yeah,
and
it's
really,
exactly. I saw a picture of one and I was like, that looks like a bamboo thing.
yep. Yeah,
Yeah,
it was all hemp. So it's
I
pretty
would
interesting.
love to see hempwood and see what that looks like on a floor. I bet it's beautiful.
Yeah. And
That'd be super cool, actually.
yeah, I don't even know where to dig around. That'd be one of those things you got to dig around to find out
Right?
where that stuff's sold because
Yeah,
it's
it's that, and
probably
it's interesting because like when you look at the world, when we were talking about CBD being everywhere in the gas station, yada yada. I swear to God, I have a team of advocates that are part of my business, and they always hear me say this because I always say, trying to decipher the transparency in most of these CBD brands is not there's is none. It's like you go in, you try to figure out well, where's the farm? Like where is this hemp that they're using? Where is it getting grown? Because we know the quality of the oil starts in the soil. So I want to know who the farmers are. I want to know. So I'll go into the website and I can't tell. It's always very generic. Oh, our hemp is from organic farms in Kentucky or in Colorado. But I'm like, well, where? Like who are the farmers, right? Like I
yeah,
know in my company if I'm in North Carolina, I could go to Chadburn and I could go to the farm. Like I know exactly where this stuff is. But that's not what you see in the industry. And then you don't know who so many of them are white labeling. So they're not even manufacturing. Somebody is manufacturing it and giving it to them and then they're slapping their label on it. So part of what you want to do as a consumer is you want to really understand you want to get your products from a transparent company because you want to know that's part of how you know what you're getting and know, how good it really is and the fact that it's not regulated.
right.
Coming back to that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's gonna have to be something because it's crazy out here.
Yeah.
It's like the craft, we have a lot of craft beer and stuff out here, and it's just that craft beer stuff's everywhere. There's
Yeah.
there's distill or breweries everywhere, and I just kind of the same thing is like, they could be making CBD in their basement, and it's really not. That's not what it. Yeah,
Right.
it's olive oil and some food coloring, and um,
Exactly. Yeah, and the thing is, it's so sad because it's sort of like that's why whenever I talk to somebody who says, "Yeah, I tried it, it didn't do anything for me," I'm just like, and I don't ever, and I tell my team this, I'm like, we just can focus on what we are and not worry about what somebody else isn't,
right,
right? You never want to badmouth other brands, but it's kind of like when I hear people say, "I tried it and it didn't work for me," I'm just like, you need good stuff and then you need help. You need to, it will work for you. Like, I don't know. Um, I mean, we even have with my company, we have like a Facebook private, it's called the
right,
product hub, and it's all just testimonials. So it's people that are using the products and what they're using them for, men, women, kids, dogs, cats, and then the testimonials, right? And it's just like just massive testimonials. Like, and not just from my company, but like in general, people are benefiting if it's good quality.
yep,
And that's why even with your listeners, even if they're not my customers, they're not buying from me, I'm happy to help anybody because this is what I'm really passionate about. I'm happy to help anybody integrate this stuff into their life. I don't care what brand it is, as long as I know it's quality, and then help them navigate how to really get going with this, because it is a game changer.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep. Yep. It is. Yeah, it is definitely. I just see it from, the military veterans point of view, and then these guys are going
Yeah.
out and trying to get off all these opioids that they're being given, and
Yes.
they're getting off of them, and their lives are changing, and they're getting better. And
Yes.
that's how I see it. I see it in chats and things like that from guys that are doing it, and
Right.
they're convincing other people to, they need to get off of what they're doing and try
And
that.
if
And
they're, if people are running into, because I know with some people, they're just, they don't want to get anywhere near it just because of,
oh yeah,
whatever, right? So whether it's fear about drug testing, even if, whatever. And so, and when the thing that people need to understand is that you hear about CBD in different delivery methods.
right,
So, and so different forms. So if you have a topical CBD product, unless it's a transdermal patch, right? It
right,
will not get to the bloodstream. You can use any topical CBD product and you will never fail a drug test. It does not get there. It can't, it won't show up because it won't. We have so many receptors in our skin as the largest organ in our body. We have so many receptors for CBD, for cannabinoids in our skin, and it does amazing things for our skin.
hmm,
And there's another cannabinoid called CBG that is amazing for you. Like ours, we have a skincare line. It's all CBG. We have a collagen that is collagen with CBG. So CBG is a different cannabinoid, just like CBN. It's kind of a different thing
right,
for helping you go to sleep. And so if someone is using a topical CBD, there's never Gronkowski or Gronkowski or however you say that guy's name, the football player.
right,
He
yep,
partnered up with a CBD brand that was all topical, right? So it was
right,
all topical products, and those kinds of and then they got acquired or something, but all those products are never, they will never have an issue with drug testing for those. Now, when you are taking CBD, the way that you want to take it on a daily dose is you want to either drop it under your tongue and you have to hold it there for at least, I always tell people, more than even 60 seconds. Just let it absorb through the sublingual glands.
right,
Don't swallow, and then get it into your bloodstream, because your bioavailability is going to be higher the minute you swallow it. It starts running through your digestive system,
yeah,
processing through your liver. Less and less and less of that is going to get to your endocannabinoid system, which is where
right,
you want it. The other thing that people need to really understand is that there are all these CBD gummies out there. 99.9% of the gummies on the market are not water soluble. And that's not the actual correct scientific term, because you can't really make these water soluble. They're nano enhanced. So basically broken down, nano emulsified, broken down into little particles. And so that way they can pass through your digestive system, process through your liver faster and more intact, so that by the time they hit your bloodstream, those nano enhanced ones are in the 90th percentile in the bioavailability in terms of what
hmm,
actually gets to your bloodstream. Those that aren't, the 99.9% of the gummies out on the market, 5 to 6% is getting to your bloodstream. So it's just a total waste of money. It's like, oh my God, the difference of that is just ridiculous,
that's a big percentage.
Yeah. And there's very few that are nano emulsified. There just aren't a lot of brands out there, but that is a super important thing. The thing about nano versus tincture under your tongue is, is in the, I'm sorry, it's in the delivery method. So it's just like a gummy, like our gummy. It's 5 milligrams of CBD, right? Like that is equivalent to a full dropper, 1 milliliter of our 1,000 milligram strength bottle of CBD.
Wow.
So it's the same because of because of how much is getting to your bloodstream. And so it's not an apples to apples comparison,
Right.
right? So you can't, it's really not a matter of, oh, if I do a gummy, I get more. It's just it's getting into your body a little bit differently. It's more the
Yeah.
delivery method, not the final, and most people that are taking, when they start taking our gummies, I always tell them cut them in half. We're gonna start with not even a whole all one. Like we're going to a little bit at a time and
Right.
see where we are.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think it's an industry that's going to be changing probably quickly. It's probably going to be one of those things that's going to change too quickly. And the FDA and some of the other things, probably the hemp industry is going to take off and it's going to be
Yeah.
everywhere, all over the place. And but the CBD part is going to be something that's it's going to take a little while. The if
And I think the other thing that will happen is that and I welcome that we welcome the regulation. Our CEO has been in direct conversation with the FDA. They look at this company as sort of a benchmark. Like we were the first company to have a QR code that's on our bottle. So I see one like right here. So like you can take it's a scannable QR code to take you to your certificate of analysis. We were the first ones to put that out, and then other people followed suit. We have products out right now. We have a nano jelly that is USDA organic certified. Nobody else has that because
hmm,
you to get USDA organic certification and to get a nano emulsified kind of water soluble product. It was such an interesting conversation that I had with our founder, one of our 5 founders, our CEO. When I first met him about 4 months after I started with this company, I met him in Charlotte, and I was like, I'm hearing all about water soluble and that it's in the 90th percentile. And this is just everybody, it's all the rage. And I said, are we gonna have that? And he said, well, and this is before had any USDA organic certification other than our farm, right?
right.
No, we didn't even have our farm yet. And this was like in the summer of 2019. And he said, our number one goal is USDA organic certification. And he said, and in order to create a water soluble gummy, you have to implement surfactants and chemicals. And he said, we won't do that because we want that organic. Our goal is that organic certification. And our CEO he comes from the agriculture world. He was like
Right.
he was running one of the biggest sweet potato exporters in the country. He's an agriculture guy. And he's like, so he said, never say never, Jackie, because we have our lab is actually on the University of North Carolina in Wilmington campus, partnered with their science department, and we're running over 200 R&D projects in there on delivery methods and strains and all
Right.
this stuff. So he said, never say never, because that's what we're doing in our R&D is we're looking at, is there a way, if we can come up with a way to maintain our organic product and create that delivery method, you can bet we'll do it. So fast forward 2 years later, we introduced to the marketplace the only USDA organic certified gummy, and it's still the only one. There's nobody
Yeah.
else that has that. And those kinds of things, I think what will happen with all this regulation is that it's going to be really great for companies like mine and for consumers because they're going to get rid of all the bad players.
Right.
They will require a lot more policing and regulation and people getting knocked out of the park. Everybody's on the field right now, whether they even can catch a ball or not. Like everybody's out there trying to be part of the team, and
Yep.
it's like only the real athletes are going to be able to stay and actually play the
Right.
game.
Right.
And so I think that is going to be great for consumers because then they don't have to be as afraid of what they're getting, and they're going to know more about how things are being guarded and policed and protected.
Yep.
We
That's
need
yeah.
that.
Yep. That's how it's going to have to be.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's an interesting little interview there. I think that maybe yeah, I have you on Facebook, so if something else pops up in the near future and something exciting happens, we can probably come back and revisit that and
Oh, yeah, I
put
would
an
love
put
that.
another put another one out there and
I would love that.
yeah, so we can
And
yeah,
anyone can feel free to reach out with any questions that they have. We'll put all my contact information there. This is my passion. And it's just, it's so cool to be not only coming into a world that I have new stuff to learn, which I absolutely
right,
love. And then I have people that I can help them become entrepreneurs and create their own businesses or side gig business to be involved with this particular company, which is also super fun. But just helping people feel and live better, like there's no better, it's the best gig in town.
yep.
So yeah, I found my passion. I mean, I will never stop.
Well, that's why That's why I did this, because that's, you look at that and somebody goes CBD. Why would anybody want to be a part of that? And
Yeah,
you just explained
yeah.
why somebody wants to be a part of that. So
Yeah, and if anybody has an interest in getting into this business, they really need to talk to me because this is the company to partner with. This is the company to align with, and I get to help them, you know, do it, which is so
right,
fun. I love that.
right, all right, yep. All
Okay,
right, so yeah, we'll put all those links down in the description of the
awesome.
so you can, anybody that's interested, go ahead and do that. And
This
then
was so much fun. Thank you for having me.
yeah, not a problem. And if something else comes up in the near future, yeah, just let me know and
I will
we'll pop back on and do another little quick interview and explain what's going on, and people
give you the
can,
updates.
yeah,
There's
give
just
me,
so much that's just always,
oh
you
yeah,
know, I'm always feeding information to people on my team because there's just so much, there's so much news coming, updates and things coming
right.
out. It's just
Oh
so
yeah.
exciting.
Yep. It's
So
good.
it's a ground floor industry, which is really cool.
Yeah. And how many of those do you really get to be a part of
Yeah, none. That's
nowadays? It's almost
my life.
none. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
yep, it's
exactly.
pretty cool.
So great to meet you.
Yep, you too. So yeah, thank you.
For
Thank you for
having
coming on,
me.
and
Thank you. I'll look up here and say goodbye to all of your watchers and
yeah,
listeners.
it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next few years, probably 5 years.
Absolutely.
Yep. So
All right.
okay,
Well,
yeah.
we'll stay connected.
All right. Yeah, thanks for coming
Thank
on, and
you.
we'll talk later. Thank you.
Okay. Sounds good. Bye.
Bye.